I made a video a couple of weeks ago that talked about where home prices were headed in 2022, and I'm not gonna lie, there were some folks out there that were not happy with that message. They weren't really upset with me, it was more about the message. And all signs right now point to the fact that in 2022, home prices will continue to climb. Maybe not at the same pace that they did in 2021, but they are certainly going to remain strong and more than likely increase. Now, there's really four things that I would say help determine the fact that home prices are going to continue to rise. Number one has to do with the low supply of inventory, right? There's just not enough homes out there for sale. With low supply, obviously it's economics 101, low supply, high demand, you're going to get prices being driven up by that. Secondly is the interest rates. So I know they're talking about, the Fed is talking about tapering, but the reality is interest rates are still at historic lows. So even if they go from 3% up to 3.25%, I think they're anticipating going up to as high as 3.6, maybe 3.75%. That's still very, very low in terms of a long-term 30-rate fixed interest rate. And again, I'm not even talking about other options that are on the table and currently being discussed, which is lengthening the term from 30 years to a 40-year fixed rate mortgage. But that's another video altogether. The third thing that is going to help drive home prices up has to do with, and I'll lump these together, is increased rents and inflation, right? So inflation is running rampant and there's no signs of that slowing down anytime soon. Even if they increase the interest rate, the reality is they're just pumping so much money into the economy through these stimulus packages. And I think we're going to see some additional incentives, not incentives, but universal basic income. We're going to see a lot of money pouring into the economy for folks. And the reality is we're going to continue to see just tons of stimulus. And then fourth and finally has to do with the increase in the conforming loan limits. So I did a video, again, I'll link that up here somewhere, last week talking about this, but this is a big deal. So this basically means that people can now borrow, in my market, I'm in the Boston market, can borrow up to $970,800 or something like that. It's close to $1 million, which for again, in the past, that would have been required. You would have had to get a jumbo loan or do a first and second mortgage, and it would be much more, I won't say much more expensive, but it would have been significantly more expensive than had you got a conforming loan. Because again, with a conforming loan, you're going to get the best mortgage terms. So, all that being said, it now seems like more people are jumping on my bandwagon. Again, a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people were coming out with like, oh, everything's going to crash. Zillow has tanked. Open Doors tanked. The reality is those are real estate tech companies, and the way that they make their money is through advertising. They got into the flipping game, and then they realized, oh boy, we can't control our costs with these material costs, labor costs, and we just can't get the people to do the work. So that business model is not going to work out well long term. But the reality is again, for those four reasons that I just talked about, you're going to continue to see home prices continue to appreciate in 2022. I have an article pulled up here that we can review that lends a little bit more credibility to that prediction. But before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Brian. I'm a realtor here in the Boston market with Lamacchia Realty. And on this channel, we cover all things real estate. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Okay, so this is an article from Realtor.com. And you can see, look at these flames. Let me turn on my mouse highlighter here. You got the flames up here in 2022. So they think it's going to be a hot market in 2022 as well. Competition will be fierce for homes in 2022's 10 hottest real estate markets. I'm not going to read this whole article, but I'm going to pull out just a few things that I think are relevant. Okay, so we pulled the metrics, crunched the data, and dusted off our Ouija boards to pull together a forecast of the housing market's expected to sizzle in 2022. These are the places where prices and number of home sales are expected to rise the most in the year ahead. Those who can afford to do may want to buy now before they're priced out. So I have been beating that drum now for a couple of months, and if you watch my videos, you'll know that. I've been saying all along this winter is probably your best opportunity if you are a buyer to purchase something, not necessarily on the cheap, but to actually get something under contract. Because the reality is once the spring market hits, All these people that had extended their leases back in June, July, August, and September, all these people are going to be right back in the market. And with rents increasing, you're going to see a lot of people come to the realization like, hey, am I going to pay, let's say I'm spending $2,000 a month. Am I going to spend now $2,500 a month? Because essentially that's how much rents are going up around here. The nation's top markets of 2022 are largely tech hubs in Mountain West and Midwest that offer an affordable alternative to overpriced cities on the coasts. There are a few areas in the Northeast and the West Coast as well. These are places that also have healthy economies of their own with low unemployment rates and substantial job growth. Our top housing markets are attracting remote-minded workers, possibly interested in snagging a big city salary while still enjoying the quality of life that these generally smaller areas afford. Realtor Chief Economist Danielle Hill. The rise of remote work since the COVID-19 pandemic meant that some white-collar workers, fed up with the expensive housing markets of major cities like San Francisco, New York, and Boston, decided to move to cheaper locales. That trend is expected to continue next year as people who can work from anywhere expand their home searches and try to get maximum bang for minimal bucks. That's not to say that these places are affordable exactly. In fact, the average listing price in these top 10 cities last month was $431,000 in November, compared with a national median average of $379,000. But they do offer more options than some of the larger markets where people are coming from. With competition in these areas expected to increase in the next year, prices are expected to only rise further. A win for sellers, but another potential roadblock to already cash-strapped buyers. Buyers in these areas can look forward to a competitive market that will require a focused approach, Hill says. That means setting a firm budget and a list of true must-haves, quote, so you don't get carried away in a bidding war. So again, I talked about this in a different video, the fact that bidding wars are back. I saw it this past weekend. There was many, again, within Lamacchia Realty, we have kind of a Facebook group that everyone shares what's going on in the market. So it's really, really helpful for realtors like myself just to see what's happening in other markets. Now, some of the markets that we serve, we've got New Hampshire, we've got Worcester, Leominster, like we're all over the place here in the Northeast. But there were many pictures of cars lined up down the street, across the street, blocking traffic. Probably should have had a police detail there with the amount of people that were there for those open houses. So the bidding wars are 100% coming back. And this is almost laughable. This quote here that says, so you don't get carried away in a bidding war. You know, the reality is buying a house and selling a house as well. It is a highly emotional endeavor, and you're going to get carried away, and you're going to bid up home prices because you're going to have this fear that it's the last house on the market. And the reality is, and what people quickly found out in the spring, is that they're right. There are not many houses for sale. So if you have a house that's in a great neighborhood, that's in good condition, that doesn't need a ton of work, there's going to be a feeding frenzy. Now, what I have seen recently is that homes that need quite a bit of work, those homes are being discounted because people realize and recognize that the costs to replace a roof are significantly more expensive today than they were even just a year or two ago. So people are factoring that in their decision to not bid up homes that need quite a bit of maintenance or repairs. All right, let's keep going. All right, so let's just look at some of these metro areas. You've got Salt Lake City, Boise, Idaho. All right, third is the Spokane Valley, Washington. These are people fleeing out of Seattle. Indianapolis, Columbus, Ohio, Providence, and Warwick, Providence in Warwick, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Yeah, so those are right on the border of Massachusetts. Greenville, Anderson, South Carolina, Seattle, Tacoma, Worcester, Mass, and then Tampa, St. Petersburg, Florida. In all these places, they're saying, look at these amounts that they're anticipating, the price growth year over year. Let's not pay too much attention to the sales growth because that's just a function of number of homes for sale, but the price growth is really what we're most interested in. So these range anywhere from, looks like a low of 5.5% all the way up to 9.5%. And I'll be honest, I think these numbers are very conservative. You know, they're talking single digits here. I would not be surprised in the least if many of these markets are in double-digit growth once again for 2022. It's just a math equation. There's way more buyers out there than there are homes available for sale. And you've got, again, investor money pouring in. Borrowing costs are so cheap. And that's what so many people don't understand is historically these interest rates have been in the 5, 6, 7, 8% range. I said this in another video where I've got my first house bought in 1998. The interest rate was 7.25%. I was thrilled. I thought that was a great deal. But if I compare that versus where we are today, it's not even close. You can purchase so much more home right now with an interest rate in the 3s than you could with the interest rate in the 7s. So what do you think? Do you anticipate home prices in your market going up over the next, say, 12 months? So by the end of 22, are we going to see another double-digit increase in home prices, or are we going to see some moderation? I think it's in some markets, it's probably going to be a moderation, maybe even a pullback. But in most markets, especially desirable locations like the ones that we just talked about here, you're going to see potentially double-digit gains again in 2022. That's not good or bad. It's just the reality in which we live. So anyways, let me know down in the comments below. If you did enjoy this type of content, make sure that you smash that like button and also hit the subscribe button to be notified of additional videos. Thanks for watching. Take care.